Hello and welcome to the program. Ukraine is expecting to receive a new tranche of aid from the IMF for more than a year now. Now, with the law on anti-corruption court adopted, Ukraine expects to receive this next tranche of the loan by autumn of 2018. So how realistic are these expectations? Joining us in the studio today to discuss this topic is Dmytro Boyarchuk, Executive Director at CASE Ukraine. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Hi.
The first question is, while one of the main demands to unlock this new IMF tranche was and is the creation of the anti-corruption court. The law has been voted. What's left to be done?
Two things are remaining. The first one is increase of gas prices. Actually, I would say an adjustment of gas prices to the so-called import parity level. And the second point is related adjustment of budget 2018. We are talking 2018. As regards to gas issues, you know that back in 2016, Ukrainian government committed to adjust gas prices if they change more than 10% every 6 months. Gas prices increased. We were expected to adjust gas prices a year ago. But Prime Minister Groisman said that he's not eager to complete this point, and actually the IMF tranche was delayed. We already, last time we received wire from the IMF in April 2017. Now we are waiting for more than a year for so-called fourth review. As regards to the budget, in general, the budget is okay. We have more or less good general budget collections, but the problem is with payroll tax and with pension fund. For some reason, the target for pension fund was overly optimistic. It was something like 35% increase was expected. But in reality, we have growth of 27%, which is substantially below the target. And already in July, we had a problem with commitment of liabilities and pensions. It's not a critical problem. The price of this problem is about 10, maybe 15 billion hryvnias per year. It's for a trillion hryvnia budget. It's not a critical issue. It's something like 0.4% of GDP. But for the IMF, it's important. They want to keep us like in line with our real
commitments and potential. Now, you raised the idea, the problem of the increase of gas prices, which is a pressing matter. Now, the main question would be, is the Ukrainian market ready for it? Because, for example, like during winter, the gas bills are like, prices are skyrocketing, and it's not necessarily easy for the average Ukrainian citizens to go through that kind of increase. How can the IMF ask at one point to have like gas prices increasing, and on the other side just forget about the reality of the average Ukrainian citizen's life?
Reality is that you should pay the real price for everything. If you create subsidies, then someone will be covering that. Who should pay for that? Should it be someone, you mean oligarch, as we used to name, or it should be the next generation? Usually we have next generation because it's like accumulated as debts, and which translate in crisis at some point. And that's why the IMF insists very strongly that we should stick to real prices. Another point, that it was own commitment of the government. The government came out with a proposal that we will adjust gas prices every time we see gas prices will deviate by 10% in up or down every 6 months. Now government says no, we made a mistake. We should make this adjustment softer. For IMF, it's a kind of really important issue because it's like sticking to rules. If you commit it, your commitment should be implemented.
But as I said, like the reality of it is that gas prices are really increasing really fast, and the salary are not necessarily increasing fast. So there is a sort of like double trajectory here, which doesn't necessarily fit to the IMF demands here.
That's the point that the government is insisting, that if we increase gas prices, we'll have more subsidies, we'll have more arrears, mounting arrears on housing bills. But the problem is that, the traditional approach, if you have poor people, those who are really poor and do not have incomes, they should have housing subsidies. Mm-hmm. Very well targeted, only for those who are really needy person. But the problem is that what the Ukrainian government suggests, that there should be a general price subsidy for everyone. Whether you are poor or not, you will be paying below the market price. And it's unacceptable for the IMF. Even if you are talking that budget spending will be growing, budget spending on housing subsidies are okay. Under price is not okay.
So cheating on the price is not okay, but it's okay to allowing subsidies to help people live better.
Yeah, because if you are working with housing subsidy, it means that incomes will be growing. Mm-hmm. At some stage, some part of recipients will be falling out of the program. But if you will remain current mechanism, that prices are lower, in a few years you will be in much more serious problem than just paying subsidies to people.
Now, recently, like earlier in the year, Ukraine's President Dmytro Boyarchuk gave an interview to the Financial Times where he kind of openly defied the IMF, saying that's not because the IMF was giving money to Ukraine that it necessarily had guaranteed. And what kind of message does it send to the IMF?
Actually, so it's not a secret. Every recipient of IMF funds, they are trying to lower demands they have, and they try to bargain because every step is painful and it has political costs, and they try to make a kind of deal for lesser obligations. But in our case, IMF was very flexible in many issues. For instance, the land reform was postponed. Mm-hmm. In reality, pension reform, which took place last year, what we call pension reform, it was not accepted in essence. But the IMF just simply muted this and said, "Okay, you consider it's acceptable, so let's move on." So, if we are talking about gas prices and about budget, those are very strong points for the IMF, because if we do not comply, it's a signal for the IMF that in few years we'll come back to the IMF again and will ask for more funds because those problems will be on agenda.
So it's so you're saying that the IMF already made efforts and that it's now the Ukrainian government to compel with the commitments.
I think yes. Everyone, I know that there are some opinion that IMF is could be under political, let's say, pressure from Washington, but usually they have very strict points. If an economy has problems, they should be cured. If poor economy comes and say we will not want to be treated, or we do not want to fix our issues but give us more money, mm-hmm. It's not a good way to proceed this talk.
Now, in a recent op-ed, Ukrainian professor Bohdan Danilishin quoted Dmytro Boyarchuk, the father of socioeconomics, saying that about the IMF advisors, quote, so that's about the IMF advisors. They know the parameters of the state by taking care of the processes that occur when the economy moves from one state to another is out of their competence. Would you say, is Ukraine relying too much on external help to lead its reform? And will it be a problem at one point if Ukraine relies too much on its help?
Unfortunately, nothing changes without external pressure. That's the reality for us. You know, it's not something we are relying. We want to look like some European country. We want to have higher incomes. At the same time, we are starting some very improper practices in economic management, in macroeconomic management. So people from, let's say, from top level, like leading countries, are pointing to us on those issues and just indicate that if you want to become richer, you should complete very simple steps, but you should be very consistent on them. And we, you know, we come again and again, ask for more funds, and it's, you know, if you are not mature enough to understand that these reforms are needed for us, so it works like funding in exchange for reforms.
Now, that's interesting that you talked about external pressure, because concerning reforms, experts created this kind of a concept to define how it works in Ukraine. It's like this sandwich effect, so meaning pressure from the external point of view, external donors, and also domestic pressure from civil society. Why not going through completely this sandwich effect, and why couldn't, for example, international donors skip the Ukrainian government at one point and give directly funds to civil society instead?
The government has authorities. They are like empowered to manage the process. Civil society cannot define which kind of foreign currency regime we have, fixed or free float. We can talk, we can criticize, we can point to some drawbacks, but you know, analytics and head of like NGOs, they do not have authorities to to approve laws. There are some very clearly defined people, like MPs, ministries, head of national bank, etc.
Yes, but if the civil society has, for example, good ideas about society, why not giving it a bit more power throughout funds?
I think it should be a balanced approach, because you know, it's a way of checks and balances. It's a way of identifying how it works better, because usually you have this council of civil society representative council at every ministries, and it's not very often that they work properly. Usually you need some bureaucratic procedures, so to make the state apparatus working.
Now, to conclude this interview, next year is a turning point for Ukraine. It's 2019, is his election year. How to ensure that the reforms implemented today in 2018, or even before, implemented or voted now, will stay after the elections, if there's like any changes with the government, or if the body of government changes? No guarantees
at all. There could be a new person who just make a U-turn and everything will be returned to the initial points. And that's a very big risk. That's another issue why the IMF doesn't want to grant money for nothing. In essence, the situation is such as that in 2020 we will come to the IMF anyway, because you know, repayments will be mounting. For now they are high, but they are not that high. We can manage them. We have more or less good gross reserves. In 2020 we will not have gross reserves. Whatever happens, whether we have the final 2 billion wire from the IMF or not, in 2020 whoever is in power, he or she will have to come to the IMF and start a new program. That's the story.
Okay, well, we'll closely follow this case then. Thank you for joining us for this overview on this topic. That was Dmytro Boyarchuk, Executive Director at Case Ukraine. Thank you for watching UATV. Stay tuned for the rest.